And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh, and before his servants, and became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers. Now the magicians of Egypt they also did in like manner with their enchantments. For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods.
Hello, welcome to Interview. Tonight, a discussion that is guaranteed to divide the room. The Melbourne man you're about to meet believes he has a gift, that he can heal people with the power of his mind. For 5 years, he's been trying to convince the medical community to take his energy healing seriously, pointing to his success with conditions that Western medicine struggles to treat. As his celebrity grows and he finds himself in greater demand, this year he's become the star of US cable TV series The Healer. But could this new fame expose him to ridicule and the possibility he may not have a gift at all? Please welcome Charlie Goldsmith. Hello. When I say ridicule, I don't mean for me. 20 years. Well, you've just corrected me from the off. You said for 20 years you've been trying to convince people of this.
Yeah, well, I discovered it in 1999, so yeah, all right. 19 years.
We'll come to that because I think the first thing to do, so people can see what it is you actually do, is to show a little bit from your series, The Healer.
Hi.
I'm Diamond.
Diamond, nice to meet you. I'm Charlie.
Likewise, thank you.
I just basically need to know your symptoms.
With the complex regional pain syndrome that I have, everything is left side.
Yeah.
And it's from the hip down to my foot. I cannot straighten my leg all the way, and I cannot bend my leg, the knee.
She's been unable to walk for some time. I'm understanding it's been most of this year. It's been something that hasn't been able to be treated, and that she's suffering a great deal. Okay, so I'm going to do the next test now.
Okay.
Will you stand up?
Okay, can you explain what's going on there when your eyelids are closed and they're fluttering?
So essentially what I can do is when I close my eyes, I will focus energy, which initially when I first started doing it, it would be out of my hands, and then after a while, as you see there, I don't use my hands. I sit here like this because I can just focus it directly into someone's body part, and very rapidly that will change the state of, whatever the condition is. So not every time, but about 80% of the time it will, have a very dramatic effect in pain and ability to, to use that part of the body. People always say to me, how do you do it? And I'm like, well, how do you walk? And you can show me how you walk, but you really can't explain to me what's going on in your body as you do it. You just walk. And so...
Where does the energy come from?
I don't know the answer to that. There's a lot of theories and people have very strong beliefs, whether they're, coming from religion or they're spiritual or, the science community. They have different views, and I don't really think about them too much, because for me at the moment, the biggest problem is no one knows these things can happen. And so my focus has been, look, it can happen, look at it, and we'll worry about the theory later. So
Is your sense, though, that the energy's within you or that it's coming from somewhere else?
I think it's from somewhere else, but yeah, my sense is that, I know how to do things that I shouldn't know how to do. I wasn't taught, I never read a book about it, I just started doing it one day. And I know how to do things that I have no business knowing how to do, but I can't give a definite answer beyond that. I don't know.
What ailments are you able to heal?
A lot of different things. I think that's one of the interesting things about what these sort of things can do, but the things I'm really strong with would be autoimmune conditions like arthritis or fibromyalgia, things like that. Allergies, viruses. I'm very good with severe cases of herpes, And often I seem to fit in this space where people aren't getting help from, you know, the typical interventions like Western medicine or, you know, the common alternate medicines where they're unable to get better, and then somehow those cases seem to be very easy for me. So I'll often take someone who's been unwell, you know, in chronic pain for 30 years and in 60 seconds resolve it.
Yeah, because that when I've seen the series, it doesn't take very long at all, does it?
Very fast.
It's 60 seconds at the outside.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
When doesn't it work?
20% of the time. It just, I could have 10 cases of the same condition, exactly the same, and I'll fix 8 of them, and 2, it'll have no effect. I don't know why it doesn't work sometimes. I always just assume that I'm not the person for that particular job, you know, that it's another answer I don't have.
See, the way you're describing that, and you said before you're not sure if the energy is something that comes from outside you, it almost sounds like you're channeling something that is bigger than you.
I believe that. I don't know the answer to that, so that's a belief. I typically will stay away from beliefs because what happens is, as soon as I give my belief, then all these people have, no, but I believe this, I believe that, and then they're arguing about our beliefs instead of looking at the reality of what someone like me can do and talking about that. So if someone has chronic pain or their children are sick or someone's dad is going to die of an infection and it's antibiotic resistant and they're, you know, in big trouble, someone like me in an X percentage of cases may well save their life. So
that's a big claim that you can potentially save lives. In the series, you demonstrate to your friend who travels with you, Amber, what your energy feels like. Let's take a look at that.
How are you feeling your energy-wise?
Okay.
Well, what do you feel? I still don't really know.
Okay.
Your hands are so cold.
And now do it. Now you got it?
Oh, that's weird. Shut up!
So that's what I feel.
Can you show me that?
yeah, so you won't necessarily feel it, but I'm not going to tell you also what you're going to feel.
Okay.
So not everyone will, so, but we can try.
All right.
So put your hand up. And just tell me quickly if you can feel it, because you don't want to use up my energy for this.
I'm not sure what it is I'm feeling, but I'll tell you, I'll know it if I'm feeling something.
Yeah, so you either feel nothing or you'll feel something.
No, it's
No, it's all right. Not everyone will, and it doesn't determine whether it will work or not.
Sure.
So some people will feel it strongly. Fortunately, when I discovered it, and I'm sure you saw in the show, someone felt it straight away, which made me, know I wasn't going insane because I was feeling this weird thing.
Well, tell me about the first time you realised you could heal someone.
So I was 18 and I was doing work experience at a health retreat, and I sat down one day to get I was at breakfast and sat down to get my knife and fork, and as I went to get them, my hands pulled together. And I was sitting there and I was like, it sort of went into a little bit of internal shock because it was like someone pushed them, and I pulled them apart and I could feel like this magnetism, and it was really strong. And I'm sitting there, and even when I tell this story, I don't get emotional often, but it triggers a little emotion because I've thought, I'm sick. Like there's something, I can feel something I can't see and I've lost my mind. And someone sitting opposite me was like, are you okay? And obviously I'm looking distressed. I think my eyes were welling up a bit. And I was like, I'm not okay. I can feel something between my hands. And I turned to the woman next to me and I was like, feel this. And she put her hand up and she was like, oh my God, what is that?
What was she feeling?
Typically people will feel like tingles or like a heat, or it's your sensitivity, like your sixth sense, if you like, that determines whether you're going to feel it. It's not my ability, you know what I mean? So if you happen to have the sensitivity for that, which clearly you don't, or not to me anyway, it's okay. It's probably why you're good at this stuff.
I'm completely insensitive. That's why it works.
Anyway, so a whole lot of people after that were coming up to feel this thing coming out of me, and this one woman came up, and as soon as she put her hand up, I felt that her hand was different to everyone else's. She had this lump in the air. It was about this far out. And I was like, oh, that's so weird. Your hand is different to other people's. So I was like, you've got this lump and I don't know why, but I have to get rid of it. I had no idea why I need to do that.
So there's this woman with, is it an actual physical lump?
No, not that I could see. It was in the air. So we sit down and I'm just trying to get, like I'm smoothing this lump out. And of course today I just used my head, but I didn't know that. It was a physical exchange. So I'm just like smoothing it out. And it's
how do you know you're smoothing out a lump that's...
I can feel it getting smaller.
But it's in the air, it doesn't exist.
Well, it did to me.
It did to you?
Yeah.
Did it to her?
Well, I'll get to that.
Okay.
So I wasn't thinking, I was just really focused and I just had to smooth this thing out. And so I'm halfway and I look up and she was crying. And I was like, oh my God, I'm hurting you, I'm so sorry, like I'll stop. And she was, no, please keep going. And I was like, okay, it's cool. So I keep going and I get to the point where it's gone basically. And she's still crying and she starts bending this finger. And she was like, I haven't been able to bend this finger for 10 years. And I went back into shock because I wasn't in any way expecting an outcome, let alone that outcome. But of course, she knew what I was doing.
You think of it as a gift, and you took that gift to America in 2013 to the Lutheran Medical Center at New York University, and they did some testing. What was the test designed to do and how was it conducted? So from a lot earlier than that, I always wanted to be studied because I know that ultimately is, you know, what's going to break through. And so I was lucky a hospital in New York said, you know, the head of research spoke to me and said, you know, I'm interested in doing some work with you. What do you want? And I said... So can you explain succinctly, as I said, how it was designed and how it was conducted? Essentially, it was designed in a quite a simple way and a cheap way in order for me to prove myself to do a bigger study. So what they did is they gave me something like 30 cases of patients that weren't responding to the interventions of the hospital. So an intervention being, you know, antibiotics, pain medication, operations, you know, whatever they had at their disposal. So I got all these cases that hadn't responded and the outcomes were really strong. So I got about 80% of them from, you know, chronic pain to nothing or whatever there's, you know, bleeding in their urine to not bleeding in their urine. What was the aim of the test when they set it up? What were they aiming to conclude? It was more about a credibility step for me. So that to do a true conclusive scientific test, you do what would be like a double-blind study. So you have a control group and you have a active group, so control being like placebo and active being the medicine, or in my case, the energy. I couldn't easily get to do that study. So this was literally giving me an opportunity to go, well, let's see how you just go in a hospital. Let's see what kind of results you get. Do you have any official accreditation for what you do? No. Do you have any medical qualifications? No. Do you have a first aid certificate? No. Did you ever watch ER? Not a lot. Do you charge for what you do? No. Never? No. And how are you able to support yourself? When I started, I sort of decided early on, I was like, I don't want to charge people. I'd rather give it so it remains priceless. And that was a choice I made then. So when I was 20, I started a business, which I still have today, which has thankfully supported me being able to, you know, to do what I do all these years. Were you paid for the TV show? Yes. They don't pay much, but I was paid, yeah. They don't pay much? Wait a minute. No. I'm not as famous as you, but but I still can. So you are now, Charlie. With the show, I didn't get paid. In my mind, the people who I worked on didn't pay. They were worked on, so my transaction with them was still, for me, as it's always been. Let's go back to Diamond, who we saw at the start of the show. She had the complex regional pain syndrome. This is what happened next.
You want me to move? Oh, a step?
It's just what will show me if I need to do more. That's the thing, so... It's not pain that's stopping you, it's fear.
That's the one.
So step, go on.
doing it.
Now, we spoke to Diamond last week. In fact, we spoke to a few of your patients in the States, and all of them asked us to send you a hug. And she said almost a year later she's doing really well. She's very grateful to you. It's interesting, though, watching that there's a lot of fear in her, as there is in a lot of the patients you're treating. Could it be that it's actually fear you're removing rather than pain?
No, so it's easy to get confused because CRPS is so painful that it feels like they're on fire. So if she had her leg elevated like this, she could be pain-free, but even a breeze, someone touching her would be, horrific. So she was quite rightly, understandably scared of trying, and that happens a lot because it's so fast what I do. It's like faster than you can imagine that it could happen. So I had to, I probably spent 20 minutes getting her to walk. I was done in 60 seconds-ish. It took me that long to get her to be willing to walk. It took a while,
It's difficult to know when you watch the series, though, because there's no actual control group. So we don't see Diamond beforehand. We don't actually see what she's capable of doing before you come into the room.
With her, you couldn't.
We don't really have her medical history. We don't see her tested trying to walk before you help her to walk.
Yeah.
So you can trick this up. She's surrounded by her family, all of whom want her to be able to walk. There's a lot of emotion in that room. So it's difficult to know how real it is.
The counter-argument to that, I mean, unless you question whether she had her condition or not, but you can actually see it. Her whole leg's swollen significantly. So you can actually, in her case, see a physical sign that is a typical sign of CRPS. By the time she got to me, she's already been told that once she's been properly diagnosed, that this condition is often for life. And then I enter and close my eyes, and 30 seconds later, 60 seconds later, it's a different result.
CRPS has a large psychological component to it. And you mentioned placebo before. There's a well-accepted principle of placebo effect, which is patients who believe that the cure they're being given is going to be effective respond well to it, and when they're validated by somebody such as yourself that what they're suffering is real, they respond even better, and that the placebo effect particularly works with diseases or ailments that have a large psychological component, such as Diamond had. But you reject the thought that what you're doing is placebo?
Well, I would give two answers. One, if it is a placebo, so what? So no one else fixed her, and then whatever I did. So it was not a waste of time on her part or mine. So a placebo is not a dirty word in that sense. And this is what the skeptic doctors throw at me. Placebo, quack, insane, whatever, lots of words. I think, why didn't they do it then?
That, of course, is not their training. There's a conundrum with the idea of placebo, which is if you're announced you're a placebo, then you don't work, because placebo is, in essence, it's not a real thing. So they can't say that they're being a placebo. If a doctor turns up with full Western medical training and starts doing what you're doing, the patient's going to think, what the hell's happened to the doctor? So of course they can't do that.
Well, I mean, I would argue that if it was that simple, so like if you take the cases in the show or the cases I did in the hospital, they're all pretty sick people. Like everyone is, either hospitalised or, sick enough that the producers thought they'd be right for the show. I don't think you could ever say it would be wrong for a doctor if it was so simple to do it. So I don't actually agree with that argument.
And look, it's a fair point you make. Diamond is what you call a satisfied customer. She's very grateful to you. You helped her. Where are your limits? Can you help someone with cancer?
I get asked that a lot. There's a few reasons I don't like to talk about that area. One,
I think it's appropriate you do, though, because you're making big claims.
I don't have a choice now. In the study I did, there was at least one, I think, or maybe a couple of cancer patients that were in a lot of pain, and I was able to help them with that.
Were you able to reduce the cancer in any way?
I can't. Well, the study. So
that's not a claim you would make. That's
no, I made no claims about that.
Okay, I want to play another clip from the series. Here is doctor and chronic pain specialist Adam Weitzman.
I am the most skeptical person when it comes to things that aren't evidence-based. That being said, because pain is an experience, I'm always interested in learning about new approaches to changing that experience. If a patient has an 8 out of 10 pain and Charlie's able to apply his healing to that patient and that patient's pain goes to a zero, I want to know why. I want to see it. I think our current understanding of these energy treatments, the data is still new, but science has demonstrated that the mind has a very powerful effect over pain. So there's a very real mindfulness effect on pain.
There are doctors who take you seriously, but there are many who don't. Why is it important to you that they do?
Because I think it's important for the people that they're treating, and doctors are the hub for sick people. That's where you go, that's where you trust. And doctors are great. I have no problem with the medical industry whatsoever. I think it's hugely important, but essentially I don't see myself as competition in any way to them. I see myself as another potential medication.
Do you see yourself ultimately working in a hospital or an ICU, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I've been at my best, and that's where I feel like I have this thing I can do, but there's nowhere I can do it at my very best. So, like, yes, I can set up a little room in my second bedroom and work on cases that just come to me, but when cases come to you, it's going to be someone's sore toe and then something serious and then a whole lot of, like, you know, it's mixed, whereas I belong and I thrive inside a hospital. And that's where, like, when the times I have been privileged to work within a hospital, I'm able, it's like the basketballer that needs the basketball court. Without that, you can't do your thing, you know.
You're doing a thing now called distant healing, and we have some footage here of you on Facebook with a young boy who has fibromyalgia.
Where's the worst parts of your body that hurt at the moment?
My back and my ribs and around my ankles.
In the place here.
Lower back? Okay.
Yeah, lower back, yeah.
Okay. All right, just stay seated. Just give me a second, Kate.
Okay.
Okay, I just want you to stand up now and tell me if your back feels the same or different. Is it? Sit down so I can see your face. How does it feel now?
It's better.
Okay, so you've got an 11-year-old boy who's got this very charming man who's doing something extraordinary, an offer to make him feel better. He's got his mum next to him who clearly wants him to feel better. He's aware that in some ways he's the star of a show with an unknown audience who are all rooting for him to feel better. Of course he's going to say he feels better, isn't he?
You know, I mean, I think he has fibromyalgia and chronic pain. Comes home from school crying most days, can't play sport. And so, sure, he could pretend in that moment. Fortunately for him, he's still better. I don't know how long that's gone up, a few months ago now, so he's great, still doing great. So yeah, I guess you could argue people could pretend. I don't, you know,
I'm talking more about suggestibility. This is a young boy. He could be very suggestible to the idea that...
Okay, so I'll come back to... I mean, if you watch that, I didn't suggest anything to him. And you've got to know, I didn't have a profile before a couple of years ago, right? So I used to work on people who had no concept of how effective I was. I was just as effective.
How concerned are you about the potential danger that somebody who's generally unwell might forsake treatment, which is important, because they're attracted by what you're offering, which is free and seemingly magical?
You know, I'm very clear with people that they should never stop whatever their treatment is without talking to their doctors, because even something like painkillers, even if I remedy pain, they've still got to taper off intelligently. I'm not qualified. People will ask me for sure, like, now that I feel better, can I stop taking my meds? And I don't. Experience tells me what certain meds will do if they come off them, which makes that experience tells me I'm not in a position to ever make those calls. So I don't step into areas that I don't belong. The only place I feel like I belong is when I get a problem put in front of me. If I give it a few minutes of my time, very often I can have a dramatic result. That's my zone, and that's why I work really well with doctors. I love working with doctors because they're incredible with diagnostics. I have no diagnostic ability whatsoever.
Which is potentially what makes what you're doing questionable, dangerous, because you don't have any medical skills. And that's why I wondered about, you could blunder into something. You could offer somebody hope or steer them off the course of proper medical treatment. Do you worry about that?
Well, I would worry about it if I suggested to people that they do things that would be harmful to them.
You are the suggestion, though, as in, I can heal you in a way that medical science can't.
Well, I don't say that.
No, you say, I don't know that I can heal you.
Correct. And I would never let someone, at least within my control, change their medical regime.
You're very clear that you want to be credibly tested. That's important to you, so that you can find out, prove that what you do is real. Now, that first test, the one you talk about at Lutheran, that's obviously been pretty widely criticised because it was 32 people. They were self-selecting. They were talking about something entirely subjective, which is pain. As you said, there was no control group. It wasn't blind testing, which means that they didn't know whether or not they were getting energy healing.
That's right.
And the publication in which it appeared, the Journal of Alternative Medicine, has itself been criticised for publishing pseudoscience. So that wouldn't really rank as a credible test, would it?
So what it did do is it got me the opportunities to do the credible tests. So one of them that I'll be doing that's just actually reached the point where it's funded enough to start is it's $150,000 US to do it. Now I can't fund it.
Where's this test at?
At NYU in America.
And there's a couple of other tests in the pipeline, is that right?
So Duke University and University of Arizona.
So the kind of clinical trial you would need, what's called double-blind testing, which you referred to earlier, takes a long time and costs many millions of dollars.
Yeah, take a few years per study.
To be accepted. We spoke to those three universities that you're going to be working with. The NYU, what they said is it's a small pilot test where they're testing a number of complementary medicines. So it's
me versus, so I think they're using acupuncture.
Yeah.
So the idea of that is it actually gets more, so not just me versus placebo, but me versus actually a proven, accepted intervention to show me in comparison to them. So it's actually a deeper testing in that way, which is good because my results, at the speed I get them and the rate of change is certainly consistently more than you would expect from acupuncture.
There was another test done by NYU of you back in 2015, the results of which haven't been published, and there were two authors, one of whom is an art professor in New York. Professor Gary Schwartz, who's going to work with you at Arizona, has published extensively about his belief in ghosts and is in fact designing what he calls a soul phone so that people can communicate with their deceased loved ones by phone and by text. The makers of your TV show also make Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
That's not my fault, though.
No, and I don't hold you responsible. By associating yourself with people who are either ill-equipped or highly unlikely to view you critically, doesn't it bring into question your claim that you want to be seriously assessed?
I guess this is the thing. So when I got reached out to by the University of Arizona, as you say, this professor is open to this area, you know, I find
he's not just open to it, that's his entire trope.
I know, and so if this was anything else, that wouldn't be a criticism. So if we were studying tennis and
No, but hang on, this is an entirely relevant criticism because observation, because what you're claiming to do is mysterious and unknowable and almost impossible to measure, and what he's interested in are things that are mysterious, unknown, and almost impossible to measure. So he's not an objective observer of what you do.
Well, it doesn't make him, I think, I don't know him well enough to defend him as much as I'd like to, but what I like about him, despite the fact that if it was the only study I was doing, that would definitely be a really bad idea. I agree with that. But on the other hand, the fact that he has spent a large part of his career interested in this area gives him insight into how to test things. Now, that doesn't make it wrong. I
would argue it makes him predisposed to want to show that you're right, as opposed to having a scientific, neutral, credible method.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't...
Which, from your point of view, as somebody that wants to be credibly tested, which I think is admirable, I think is problematic. Because,
but it's not
because
the only
no
thing
matter
I'm
what,
it's not the only thing I'm doing, though. So
but it's where you're talking and where you're walking are different places. You're talking, you want credible, but you're not walking that space.
You know, I'm not... If someone wants to study me, I'm interested. And because I'm interested in different views. So the NYU people are going to study one facet. The Duke people will study another. Now, this guy will study another. If I pass the other tests, then that gives plenty of credibility to the test he does. Now, if I don't, I'm in trouble. I agree. If I just pass his one, which was only came up recently, it wasn't even like I was looking for it, just came and he said, I'm interested. And of course, I've spent 20 years wanting to be studied. I don't particularly want to say no to anyone.
What if you are credibly tested in a way that everybody's satisfied with, and it shows that you're not a man with a gift, you're not a healer, you're just really good at the placebo? You're still helping people. Would that be a bad thing?
No, it wouldn't be a bad thing. It would certainly counter my beliefs, but that's okay. Like, I'm putting myself to do this test. I don't have a choice with the outcomes are going to be.
You've invested now considerable time and public time in selling this idea of yourself as a healer. So I guess that's my question. If it turned out you're not a healer...
Well, that's my risk. Like, I know, but I'm saying if they find out it's something else, so what? Like, who has a problem with that? You know, if they find out that it's the way I sit, it just happens to be the way I sit, triggers healing in people. And suddenly doctors are sitting like I sit and getting people off morphine and, you know, antibiotics and all these things. Well, I'm going to be proud of that. I don't think that it's going to be that way. My belief is that what I hope will happen is these institutions like hospitals, universities will actually seek more people who have this effect on people. That's what I believe, but whatever the outcome is, there's still an effect happening. It's still a strong effect, and I think it's important.
Well, whatever happens, I think there's going to be a lot of response to tonight's conversation. Charlie, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Even him, whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved.